resuscitation team. We're here today, gone tomorrow. We have 10 team members. Myself as team leader, Sheila Cooper. Lisa Harridens is the sub-team lead. And we have Laura Jensen from QI, Terry Van Steelen from admitting, Nola Tucker from long-term care, Melanie Beal from LaRange, or we should say LA, Tina Cole from Volunteer Services, Jenna Baldry, RN in the emergency department, Dr. Rousseau, and Ken Weast, another patient volunteer. So we've had a great week. This is hooray, our banzai in Japanese, so Sensei taught us that word. I hope it doesn't have any second meanings. But, our goal was to reduce the wait time for emergency patients for when they come in to time their triage to their initial clinician assessment. And so Lisa and myself, 3 weeks pre, started doing measurements, talking to the staff who has been incredibly patient with us as we tour around and try to get a really good picture of what it looks like. During our week, we have been able to make some great improvements that we are going to share with you today. Oh, I guess we're going to talk about this little map. So we made the size tray map, and basically it looks at right from when our patients walk in the door, get to the admitting desk, to the initial clinic assessment, and we had an average of about 112.9 minutes for that to happen when we started out.
Okay, I'm going to go through our target progress report, so some of our baseline measures and what our targets were for our improvements. So we looked at a lot of different measures here. Some that I'll go over the space that we wanted to reduce, save some space using a 5S. Also walking distance, and that was the triage nurse that we measured. The lead time of our entire process, our 5S score, and also the cycle time for our patient to get from admitting to see the physician. So we hope to save, our baseline measure for space was 61 square feet, and we hope to cut that in half. Walking distance for that triage nurse was 190 feet. Lead time was an hour and 53 minutes, and we hope to cut all of those by half. Our 5S score to begin with was a 1.6, and we hope to get to 3 there. And our cycle time was 3 minutes and 30 seconds in our baseline measurements. We hope to cut that in half. So our talk time calculations were based on the triage nurse, the triage nurse says. So we have 2 12-hour shifts, and it works out to 1,440 minutes available to serve the patients. And we had an average of 80 patients to serve in that 24 hours. We narrowed that down further. We had a talk time of 18 minutes with those calculations, and we broke it down to night and day. It turned out we had only slightly less during the night than during the day, so we ended up with 31 patients in the night and 49 in the day, giving the staff a talk time of 23 minutes in the night shift and 15 minutes in the day to see those patients.
Hi, my name is Terry Van Steelen, and I'm going to talk about the pre-post Kaizen standard work. And we broke this observation time for the patient and triage into 4 different categories. The first being the patient sits at triage, patient interviewed and assessed, patient to the waiting room or a room in ER, and then the nurse back to the desk. And we took an average pre-Kaizen cycle time of 8.1 minutes. There are many variables that could change the cycle time. Number 1 being the interview or assessment time. It could be greater depending on the CTAS or the triage score. And it is necessary and more time consuming for a nurse if the patient is urgent or emergent. There's more data to collect and enter. Number 2 is interruptions. Number 3 is taking a patient to a bed. And number Number 3 is taking a patient to a bed. Number 4 is assisting in the ER. And right now, the nurse takes care of 1 to 3 patients as well as doing the triage process. Post-Kaizen, that average cycle time is 6.56 minutes. So post-Kaizen chart indicates that our RPIW lessened the patient time to be triaged by 1 minute and 22 seconds, or approximately 7.3%.
Hi, I'm Nola Tucker. I'm from long-term care, and I'm speaking on the pre and post flow charts. There were several observations that were actually done over the last, previous to our week this week, but for this purpose today, I'm just talking about what happened in the triage department. So in pre-Kaizen, you can see that what happened was we timed what was happening with the triage nurse herself, the amount of time. The green is the amount of time it took to bring the patient in and have them sit. The red is the amount of time that the nurse spent doing her interview and assessing the patient. The yellow is the amount of time it took to hand that patient off either to the ER department itself or back to the waiting room. And the pink is the amount of time it took the triage nurse to actually get ready for the next person to come in. So we started off with a takt time of 15 minutes for that, and they actually were working under the 15 minutes. It took about 10 minutes for that whole process to take place. This is the post-Kaizen chart, and you can see that really it hasn't changed very much. It's much the same as it was for the pre-Kaizen. The thing that we realized in looking at all of this is the risk of the patients that are waiting to go into that triage. Some of them could be quite ill. An example might be chest pain, and nobody's picking up on that, and they're waiting to get into the triage department, or to be triaged through the nurse. So we're hoping that with some of the things that we've looked at over this past week, by bringing in the volunteers to help, that they can maybe bring those people in a little bit quicker to be triaged. Also, there's been some real work done on the orientation of the nurses in the triage department, as well as developing some standard work. And there's one other thing that they did. The orientation and some mentoring, so that with the triage nurses, they're all approaching everybody exactly the same way. And so that the hope is that when we do that, we're going to improve how we're actually assigning our CTAS scores, and that we've developed some standard work so that everybody knows exactly what they should be doing in triage.
Hi, I'm Melanie, and I'm here from Mama Wheaton Churchill as a, helper and visiting. Anyhow, spaghetti diagrams, you've already seen this, but in our pre-Kaizen, the spaghetti diagram is used to track the steps of a patient, physician, housekeeper, and triage nurse. And for the purposes of our RPIW, we focused in on the triage nurse. So here you see the pre-Kaizen, and then the second one, you will see the post-Kaizen diagrams. So another measurement that we went on to was more of abstract. So idea sheets that were given out to staff as well as those participating in the RPIW, the observers, on what improvements can be made, how can we get rid of the inefficiencies rather. And so this first one you'll see is more focused on patient information. So can they go to another walk-in clinic or have x-rays done elsewhere as opposed to the emergency department? And in that, we've developed a patient information sheet with the clinic information, as well focusing in on the CTAS scores, that a 3 and a 4 would possibly be waiting longer as opposed to the 1 and 2, and letting people know why that is, that the 1 and 2 CTAS score is more emergent. As well, we have the CTAS again mentioned in the idea summary sheet, which can, play into the CSM computer program that's used in Emerge. And this was upgraded on May 15th which made it more efficient with the and-ons. It's a trigger for the physicians and nurses to see who's the next patient, what the priority is, and that flashing is the cue with the and-on. As well, we have the idea of a volunteer desk being set out in the hallway for patient information emergency, and then on to more signage. So you'll see a few pictures that Sheila will go through. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tina Pohl, and after this week, still the happy volunteer. I was delighted to be a participant with the ER resuscitation team. Here today, gone tomorrow, tomorrow meaning that we discharge you quickly. And I congratulate every member on this workshop for the mega amount of work you accomplished in so short a time. One particular assignment that I was involved in was the 5S workplace organization. We targeted the restocking shelves located opposite the wall chairs inside the ER. The first thing we did was pull everything off the shelves and carefully check for expiry dates. Next, with the advice of nursing staff, we identified all packages, envelopes, jars, etc., if they were needed in ER in the first place. Then we sorted out what to keep on the shelves, and the rest of the items found a home in places like ambulatory care, day surgery, fourth floor ostomy, third world recycle, or were just put in the trash bin, the latter being quite substantial. Next, we added fresh labels to the shelves. We restocked only what was needed in smaller quantities. As a result, the restocking shelf area looks neat, is not overstocked, and is user-friendly to the doctors and nurses in ER.
Hi, I'm Jenna Baldry. I'm just going to speak to some of the standard work that we've developed this week for the emergency room to improve acute care flow, as well as to decrease interruptions at triage. So there's 12 of them all together that we've developed, so quite a few. Number one being the patient flow from triage to the time that the physician does the assessment. Number two, inpatient admission process from emergency, developing a template with some standard questions for admitting called the patient admission form. Number three, standard work for switchboard to direct calls to emergency, inappropriate and appropriate calls. Number four would be admitting and registration standard questions for patients who are presenting to that desk. Communication flow between the nursing supervisor, emergency, and the wards. As well as an admission process within 30 minutes. We just re-looked at that and restructured a little bit. The other thing that we had developed standard work on was activating a triage bell and the nurses in the department responding to that bell for emergency situations out at triage. We also developed the triage information sheet for patients. So I'll use this as an example. And what that does is basically we are able to provide a sheet to the patients that explains what the triage score is that they have, particularly what that means for them. It gives them some information so that they can present back to the desk if they're having issues, you know, an approximate time for lab work, as well as a sheet about the walk-in clinics, the services they provide, addresses and phone numbers. And we've got some really good feedback about that already. Number 10, restocking the patient room, so we're moving that to be away from the ER nurses and more so towards the porters. And then the 11th and 12th have to do with the volunteers, which means we have a volunteer desks for them to navigate family and visitors into the emergency department as opposed to the triage nurse, as well as just prompting the patients to have their health card and medical papers in hand before reaching the admitting desk. So this is all a lot to take in. So what we're going to be focusing on is having an education session where the managers as well as directors go from floor to floor explaining the standard work that applies to those specific areas, which will help with overall understanding and implementation.
Good afternoon, my name is Francois Rousseau, one of the emergency physicians. I want to briefly talk to you about the RPIW newspaper, and like all newspapers, it starts with bad news. So on the left there's a list of problems. We identified 24 of them. But unlike other newspapers, there's some good news as well. So in the middle is a list of solutions that we've identified this week that can solve these problems. And the best news of all is, if you look on the far right, there's the list that indicates that a lot of these problems have been solved or things have been put in place to solve it. But there's still some work to be done. And so the newspaper will document who the people are responsible for work that needs to be done in future, and also when the due date for this is. And briefly it can be summarized as people, the place, and the product. The product being the health care that we offer. So for the people, it's mainly going to be education. So people will have to be educated regarding the standard of work, and they have to respond to the different add-ons that's been put in the department. In our workplace, there needs to be a few changes as well that needs to be looked at in future. And a lot of it is about designated areas for certain tasks to be completed, from documentation to where patients can be assessed, that's non-emergency consults. And then, the third, about the product, we want to offer, healthcare to satisfied customers, but we don't want to compromise on areas like infection control. And we also look now up to the point of when the physician assesses the patient. The next step is really to look at, from that assessment to the point where the patient is being discharged, and that's probably work for a future RPIW.
Hi, I'm Lisa Herodens, and I'm sub-team lead on this team. And you've now heard about all the great improvements that have occurred, so I'm just going to highlight the percentage of changes that happened in some of the measures we looked at. The space, where we 5S actually improved by 26%. In that area, which was just into the ER entrance. And the walking distance, we use the example of the triage nurse rooming a patient from the triage desk to and from Ops 4. We're actually able to reduce that walking distance by 41% because the triage nurse wasn't being pulled to room a patient. She actually had the RNs inside pulling the patient into the ER. Lead time in our value stream map actually improved by 69%, and one of us rounded up, one of us rounded down, so it's 3% difference. And so we were happy about that, and that was again from the time the patient patient registration to the first assessment by the ER doc. The 5S score improved by 118% if we go back to the previous year. And so that's awesome. Our score went up, and we really want to highlight here a picture of some of the team members actually created a stocking cart for the porter to stock the rooms, and actually also can at it. So that's brand new, and we're very, very excited about that. Our cycle time for a patient being triaged also improved by 52%, and that was because we felt that there was less interruptions happening to that triage nurse. So some workshop summary items that we want to share is lessons learned by the team is that the ER staff were very, very adaptable and really do work as a team to provide that patient care. There were times when I started to choke up when I spoke about how wonderful that team was. Making changes impacts not only one department but many across the continuum, and I think it's really important that we the changes that we make to hold those gains by doing that follow-up. Appreciate each other's work in their departments and help to break down the silos, and that education again occurs across the continuum for culture changes. And we felt that the ER was a very busy place with unpredictable and fluctuating patient flow, and we're confident that the improvements that we've helped put in will enhance the patient experience and make a better place for the ER staff to work.
Good afternoon. My name is Ken Riesta. We're running out of time. We had what we believe to be a very successful RPIW. This did not happen by chance. A tremendous amount of time, knowledge, and work was utilized to achieve our goal. Many individuals contributed information, assistance, and shared their knowledge. In particular, but in no particular order, we would like to thank Tracy Hobson, Erin Deal-Ferris, Elena Ross, Sonia Jantz, Wayne Kirk, Heather Vansel. Throughout the process, we received awesome support and assistance from the admitting department, the emergency department, and we received some help from the mental health department. That was mainly for me. Also, thanks to the admitting and ER patients who showed a great deal of tolerance and cooperation for our team. Special thanks to Cincy Narada and translator Yoko for their guidance, interaction, and encouragement throughout the RPIW process. From the ER resuscitation team, here today, gone tomorrow, we wish to thank you for the opportunity to participate.
まず最初にチームの皆さん大変ご苦労様でした。
First of all, once again,
大変
I'd like
1
to
週
thank
間
all
頑張れ
the
たと思い
members.
ます。
I have observed you working so hard.
それとスポンサーとプロセスオーナーの人
I
も
also
大変
want to thank
含めて関係職場の人大変
and
ご
sponsor,
協力も良くて大変
everybody
いい1週間だと思います。
who has provided us guidance and assistance. Thank you so much.
で、私がここで担当する2回目の RPIW で前回に引き続きエマージェンシーのとこね、のとこをやりました。
This was my second RPIW at this hospital.
前
Last
回
time
は
was also focused on
前
the
回はこの
ER.
少し後の工程をやりまして、今回はその前工程ということで、
Last time the focus area was slightly downstream.
で患者さんが待つのを減らそうというのは前回と同じテーマでした。
However, they share the same target or objective of reducing the patient's wait time.
このテーマというのは非常に難しくて、たくさん問題点があると思います。
I think this is a very challenging theme,
もちろん退院のところから。
because there are so many issues involved.
本来は後工程から攻めてくるのが本筋ですけども、今回のテーマとしては前工程をやりました。
It would have been a little bit easier if we started off with a downstream process, obviously, because if you have something working upstream, if the downstream is not ready, it
だから
doesn't work very
今
well.
回は受付から
But
受け
we
付け
did
て
the
から
best we could,
トリアージに進んで最初の初診が
starting
受けるま
from
で
the
と
admission
短い期間
to
で
the
す。
initial assessment. It's a very short lead time.
その中でこのチームとしてやれることをやりましょうと、まずは。
So we decided that we should do whatever we could, the best we could.
で、一番大事なのはいろんな仕事が標準化されてなかったということで、
The biggest issue was that there were so many things that are being performed, but there's no standard work.
それで皆さん改善の基本である標準化をしましょうということで、12の標準作業ができたのは大変良かったと思います。
So we started to create standard work for the things that we could, and you remember seeing 12, the list of 12 standard work that we created.
だから標準作業というのは一回決めたら未来英語なものではなくて、やってみていろいろまた不都合が起こると思います。
Standard work, as you may, when you think about it, sometimes you think that it's written in stone, but it's
だから
not.
改善というのは
You
その
try
ス
it
タンダードが
and you
こ
find new
う常に
issues, then you need
更
to
新していくのが
update
一つの改善の成果
it.
だと思い
That's
ま
why we call it continuous improvement, right?
す。だから今後さらにそういうことを続けてほしいということと、
So I hope that all the efforts that we have done will be
で今回の RPIW の目的はもう一つ皆さん初めて改善やる人が多いからいろんな手法を覚えます。無駄とは何かだとか。
And
For those people who were participating in RPW for the first
大
time,
変
I
難
think
し
this
い
was a very good learning
タイム
experience.
スタディも大変難しかったと思いま
Learn
す。
what the mudas meant and how to find them.
さまざまな患者さんが来て、やることがいろいろ違います。症状も
You
違い
have
ますし
so。many different situations, patients coming in with different conditions, and there were many things that were variable.
その中でもやっぱり皆さん非常に前向きにチームワークも良くて、非常に改善ということを楽しんでもらえたと思います。
But nobody was giving up. You were always positive in
やっぱ
what
り
you were doing, and I hope that you had fun doing it this week.
だから改善というのは私がの先生である大野太一も言ってますけども、続けていくのが大事です。
As my mentor, Mr. Ono, Taichi Ono said, it's very important in Kaizen that you continue to work on it. Not
一
just
番悪いのは中
feel
途半
that
端で
it's
終わること
done
ですね。
just because you've done it once.
途中でやめることが
The
一番まずい。
worst is you don't finish what you have started.
だから毎回言うように、やっぱりここの病院で改善という文化が皆さんに広まることとしては大変いい RPIW だと思いまして、もっと仲間を増やしてください。
And I say this all the time, but Kaizen, this has to be a part of your DNA or culture. And I hope that you will continue to do your work so that you can make more friends in Kaizen.
まだまだER の中ではたくさん改善するべきことがたくさんあると思います。
There are so many things that can be improved doing Kaizen in ER.
これからまた楽しみです。
So I'm looking forward to working with you again.
ありがとうございました。大変いい
Thank you
式
very
です。
much.